Someone was sent to expose you, but what they discovered changed everything. Have you ever felt like someone was observing you closely? Not just looking, but studying you. Watching how you move, how you react, how you think. Like your life isn't just happening, it's being tracked. You brushed it off at first, didn't you? You told yourself it was nothing, just your imagination, just another passing thought in a busy world. But deep down, you knew. Something didn't feel normal, because it's not. There's a reason certain people appeared in your life out of nowhere. Think about it. The ones who asked too many questions. The ones who seemed overly interested in your struggles. The ones who came too close, and then disappeared just as quickly. Why them? Why at those exact moments in your life? Why when you were about to grow, about to change, about to become something more? Did they show up? Who coincidence? Or something else? Have you ever noticed how people react to you before they even know you? The looks, the tension, the unspoken energy in the room. Some are drawn to you, others feel threatened, and some watch you in silence. Like they're trying to figure you out, like you're something they don't fully understand, but need to. Because you're not like everyone else. You've always felt that, haven't you? That quiet difference, that inner awareness, that sense that you're walking a path no one else around you can see. And that's exactly why you've been watched, not in the way you might think, not cameras, not obvious eyes in the dark. No, this is deeper than that. This is observation of your energy, your potential, your purpose. Because there is something about you, something hidden, something even you haven't fully uncovered yet, and others have noticed it before you did. That's why certain people tried to get close, to understand you, to influence you, to slow you down, or maybe even to stop you. Have you ever wondered why your life felt harder than it should have been? Why the challenges weren't random, but almost strategic, like every time you took a step forward, something or someone was already waiting, testing you, pushing you, watching how you respond under pressure, because you were never meant to live an ordinary life. And deep down, you know that feeling you can't explain, that pull towards something greater, that quiet voice inside you that says, this isn't all there is. That's not confusion. That's not imagination. That's awareness. And awareness is dangerous, because once you start to see, you can't unsee. Now think carefully. Why did certain people underestimate you, then suddenly start paying attention? Why did some try to get inside your head, while others tried to break your confidence? Why did your growth make people uncomfortable? Why you? It's because you were never invisible. You were just observed quietly, measured, analyzed, watched to see if you would rise or fall. And here's the part most people will never tell you. You passed tests you didn't even know you were taking. Every moment you chose to keep going. Every time you stood back up. Every time you trusted that inner voice. You were proving something, not to the world, but to something far greater. Because there's a reason you're still here. After everything. After the confusion, the isolation, the moments where nothing made sense. You're still here. Why? Ask yourself that. No, really. Ask yourself. Why are you still standing when others would have given up? Why do you keep feeling pulled towards something bigger, even when you can't see it yet? Why does it feel like your life is leading somewhere specific? It's because it is. And the moment you start realizing that, everything begins to change. The watchers, the tests, the strange patterns in your life, they all start to make sense. Because you were never random. You were never lost. You were never just another face in the crowd. You were being prepared. are prepared for something most people will never even understand, let alone experience. And right now, at this exact moment, as you're listening to this, something inside you is starting to wake up, isn't it? That feeling, that shift, that quiet but undeniable realization that this is about me. Yes, it is. So the question is no longer, am I being watched? The real question is, now that you know, what are you going to do next? Because this is where everything begins. Because what they came to expose wasn't what they expected. This wasn't random, they were sent with a purpose. Listen carefully, because this part changes everything. There are things you felt, but couldn't explain. Moments that didn't sit right, conversations that felt off. You ignored them. You gave people the benefit of the doubt. You told yourself, that's just how people are. But what if it wasn't? What if certain people didn't come into your life by accident? What if they were sent? Have you ever had someone show up suddenly, almost out of nowhere, acting like they needed to know you? They asked questions, a lot of questions. What are your plans? What are you working on? What do you believe? What are you going through right now? At first, it felt like care, like interest, like connection. But something inside you hesitated, because it wasn't just curiosity they were watching. They were studying. They were reporting. Yes, think about it. Why would someone be so focused on your life, your thoughts, your direction? Unless there was a reason. Fake friendships don't start as fake. They start as perfect, too aligned, too understanding, too interested. Like they were mirroring you, learning you, mapping you out piece by piece. They laughed at your jokes, agreed with your views, earned your trust, step by step, layer by layer, until you opened up. And the moment you opened up, they were watching how you think under pressure, how you respond to challenges, where your weaknesses are. They were studying your habits, your emotions, your triggers, your patterns. They were reporting, not necessarily with words you could hear, but with energy, with influence, with subtle shifts in how others began to treat you. Have you ever noticed that? How after certain people entered your life, things started to change. Opportunities felt delayed, energy felt heavier, people around you started acting different. That's not random. Because when someone is assigned, their job isn't just to be around you. Their job is to understand you, to figure out who you really are beneath the surface. And once they see it, once they sense your potential, that's when everything shifts. Because now it's no longer about observing. Now, it's about interfering. Our fake friendships become subtle manipulation. Support turns into silent competition. Encouragement becomes hidden doubt. And you feel it. You always feel it. That slight discomfort, that unexplainable distance, that voice in your head saying, something isn't right. But you ignored it. Because you're genuine. Because you don't move with hidden agendas. Because you believe people are real, like you are. But not everyone is. Some people come with a purpose, and it's not always a good one. Have you ever wondered why some people kept asking the same questions in different ways, like they were trying to confirm something, trying to catch a pattern, trying to dig deeper than what was necessary? It's because surface-level answers weren't enough for them. They needed more access, more information, more insight into you, because you're not ordinary. And whether you fully realize it or not, they sensed it. That's why they stayed longer than they should have. That's why they paid closer attention than normal. That's why their presence felt calculated. They were watching, waiting for you to slip, waiting for you to doubt yourself, waiting for you to reveal something they could use. They were studying, learning your strengths, but more importantly your weak points, trying to figure out where you're most vulnerable. They were reporting every shift, every decision, every moment of growth. And the most unsettling part, they didn't always look like enemies. Some looked like friends. Some looked like supporters. Some looked like people you trusted. That's how it works. Because if it were obvious, you would have walked away immediately. But it wasn't obvious. It was subtle, strategic, intentional. And now looking back, you can see it, can't you? The patterns, the repeated behaviors, the way certain people appeared right before major changes in your life. That wasn't random. That was timing. Because when you're chosen, when you carry something different, something powerful, something that can't be easily understood, you don't just attract attention, you attract observation. And not everyone watching you is rooting for you. So ask yourself now, who asked too many questions? Who showed sudden interest in your life out of nowhere? Who seemed too invested without a clear reason? And why? Because once you start connecting the dots, you realize something chilling. They weren't just part of your story. They were placed in it. They were watching. They were studying. They were reporting. And now, you're finally starting to see it. But the deeper they looked, the more things stopped making sense. They thought you were easy to figure out. They were wrong. They thought you didn't know, but you did. They thought you were quiet, but you were observing. They thought your silence meant confusion, but it was control. Let that sink in, because everything they assumed about you was wrong. You see, being underestimated is one of the most powerful positions you can ever be in. But it doesn't feel powerful at first, does it? It feels like being overlooked, ignored, misread. It feels like people talking over you, dismissing you, acting like you don't fully understand what's happening around you. And for a while, you let them believe that. Not because you couldn't speak, but because you chose not to. They thought you didn't know, but you did. You saw the looks, the subtle shifts in tone, the way conversations changed when you entered the room. You noticed who respected you and who pretended to. They thought you were quiet, but you were observing, watching patterns, studying behavior, reading between words that were never spoken out loud, because your silence was never empty. It was aware. Have you ever sat in a room full of people and felt like you could see everything, not with your eyes, but with something deeper? The tension, the hidden intentions, the unspoken truths floating beneath every interaction. And yet, you said nothing. Not because you were blind, but because you saw too much. They thought your patience was weakness. They thought you were waiting because you had no choice. Because you didn't have the strength to act. Because you were unsure. But they were wrong. Your patience was never about hesitation. It was about timing. You understood something they didn't. That reacting too quickly reveals too much. That moving too soon can cost you everything. So you waited. You watched, you learned. They thought you didn't know, but you did. You knew who was genuine and who was playing a role. You knew when energy shifted, when intentions changed, when something felt off. And still, you stayed silent. That's what confused them, because most people react immediately. They defend themselves, they argue, they try to prove something. You didn't. You didn't. They thought you were quiet, but you were observing, collecting information, understanding dynamics, seeing people for who they truly are, not who they pretend to be. And the more you stayed silent, the more they underestimated you. They spoke freely around you, thinking you weren't paying attention. They revealed things, thinking you wouldn't understand. They made moves, thinking you wouldn't notice. But you noticed everything. Every inconsistency, every contradiction, every hidden motive. They thought you didn't know, but you did. And here's the truth most people will never understand. Awareness doesn't always speak. Sometimes it watches. Because real power doesn't rush to prove itself. It waits. Have you ever realized how people treat you differently based on what they think you are? If they think you're weak, they become bold. If they think you're unaware, they become careless. If they think you're blind, they expose themselves. And that's exactly what happened. Your silence became a mirror. And in that mirror, they revealed everything. They thought your calmness meant you didn't understand the game, but you understood it better than they ever could. They thought your patience meant you were behind, but you were ahead. They thought your awareness went unnoticed, but it was simply unannounced. And that's the difference. Because you were never trying to be seen, you were trying to see. There's a quiet strength in that. A kind of power that doesn't need validation. A kind of knowing that doesn't need to be explained. And the longer you stayed in that space, the clearer everything became. People started revealing their true selves without realizing it. Situations started making sense. Patterns started connecting. And suddenly, what once felt confusing became obvious. They thought you didn't know, but you did. They thought you were quiet, but you were observing. And now you're starting to understand something deeper. You were never behind. You were never lost. You were never unaware. You were gathering every moment of silence, every second of patience, every situation where you chose not to react. It was all building something inside you. All clarity, the strength, a precision. Because when you finally decide to move, when you finally decide to speak, when you finally decide to act, it won't be emotional, it won't be rushed, it won't be uncertain. It will be intentional. And that's what they never saw coming, because they got comfortable. Comfortable thinking you were passive. Comfortable thinking you didn't understand. Comfortable thinking they had the upper hand, but they were building their confidence on a misunderstanding. They thought you didn't know, but you did. They thought you were quiet, but you were observing. And now the roles are shifting, because awareness eventually moves, silencer eventually speaks, and patience eventually reveals its power. So let them think what they want. Let them underestimate you. Let them believe their version of who you are, because while they're busy assuming, you're still watching, still learning, still seeing everything they hoped you wouldn't. And when the moment comes, they won't understand how you knew so much, how you saw so clearly, how you moved so precisely. But you will, because you were never blind. You were just waiting. And that's when their mission started to fall apart. Something shifted, and they felt it. Something shifted, not outside of you, but within you. And the moment it did, everything around you began to change. But at first it was subtle, almost unnoticeable, a quiet internal realignment, a calmness you didn't force, a clarity you didn't chase. It just happened. But while it felt natural to you, to them, it felt wrong. Because the energy they were used to reading, the version of you they thought they understood, was no longer there. And that's when it began. They felt it. They couldn't explain it. They started to panic. You didn't say anything. You didn't confront anyone. You didn't announce your change. But somehow, they knew. Have you noticed it? The sudden distance. The shift in how certain people act around you. The awkward silences that didn't exist before. It's like something inside them became unsettled, because the one they were watching is no longer predictable. The one they were studying is no longer readable. The one they thought they understood is now unfamiliar. They felt it, a disruption in the pattern, a break in the rhythm they had grown comfortable with. They couldn't explain it. Why your presence feels heavier now, stronger, more grounded. They started to panic, because when someone can't read you anymore, they can't control the outcome. And control is what they were relying on. Think about it. Before this shift, they knew how to approach you. They knew what would trigger you, what would move you, what would make you react. But now, nothing lands the same. Their words don't reach you the way they used to. Their energy doesn't affect you the same way. Their presence feels smaller, and that terrifies them. They felt it. The moment you stopped reacting, the moment you stopped explaining yourself, the moment you stopped giving them access to your thoughts, your emotions, your direction. They couldn't explain it. Why you suddenly seem so distant, yet so present at the same time. Why your silence now feels powerful instead of passive. Why your energy feels closed, but not in fear, in certainty. They started to panic, because they lost something they didn't even realize they depended on. Access. Access to your mind, access to your reactions, access to your energy. And without that, they're left guessing, and guessing creates fear. Have you ever seen someone become uncomfortable for no clear reason? They can't look you in the eye the same way. Their tone changes. Their behavior becomes inconsistent. One moment they're overly nice, the next distant, then suddenly tense. That's not random. That's internal conflict. Because on one level, they're trying to understand what changed, but on a deeper level, they already feel it. They felt it. That you're no longer the same person they once observed. They couldn't explain it, because your shift didn't come with an announcement. It came with alignment. They started to panic, because alignment can't be manipulated. And now they're the ones being affected. The roles have reversed. Without you saying a word, without you making a move, without you even trying, your energy became the mirror. And in that mirror, they're starting to see themselves, their intentions, their behavior, their inconsistencies. Everything they thought was hidden feels exposed. They felt it. That quiet pressure when they're around you now, like they have to be careful, like they have to watch themselves. They couldn't explain it. Why your presence alone makes them uneasy. Why your silence feels like it's saying something, even when you say nothing at all. They started to panic, because they don't know what you know, and that uncertainty is overwhelming. So what do? They pull away. They create distance. They act strange, because it's easier to retreat than to face something they can't control. But even in their distance, you can feel it, can't you? That tension, that unspoken shift, that invisible line that's been drawn. It's not in your imagination. It's real, because energy doesn't lie. And when yours changed, it disrupted everything they thought they understood. They felt it. The moment you stepped into awareness, they couldn't explain it, because awareness doesn't need validation. They started to panic, because now they're the ones being observed, and that's the part no one prepares for. When the observer becomes uncomfortable, when the one who was watching starts to feel watched, when the one who thought they had control realizes they've lost it, that's when the truth begins to surface. Not through words, not through confrontation, but through energy. And right now, whether they admit it or not, whether they understand it or not, they feel it. They can't explain it. And deep down, they're panicking, because now they were the ones being exposed. What they discovered about you wasn't normal. There was always something different about you. Even before you had the words for it, even before you understood it yourself. It was there, quiet, unseen, but undeniable. And the strange part, you weren't the first to notice it. They did. They saw something they couldn't understand. They felt something they couldn't control. And that alone made you stand out in ways you didn't even realize. Because what makes you different was never meant to be obvious. It was meant to be felt. Have you ever known something without knowing how you knew it? That deep pull in your chest, that sudden feeling that something isn't right, that quiet voice that whispers, "Pay attention." That's not coincidence. That's not overthinking. That's intuition. When yours. It's not ordinary. It's sharp. It's precise. It sees beyond what's shown and reaches into what's hidden. Before people reveal themselves, you feel them. Before situations unfold, you sense them. Before truth is spoken, you already know it. And that's what unsettled them, because you couldn't be easily deceived. They saw something they couldn't understand. How you would step back at the right moment. How you would trust your instincts, even when it didn't make sense. How you would avoid things that looked perfectly normal on the surface. They felt something they couldn't control, because your awareness disrupted their intentions. Even when you said nothing. You didn't need proof. You didn't need explanations. You just knew. And that kind of knowing, it doesn't come from logic. It comes from something deeper. Awareness. Not just seeing what's in front of you, but seeing what's behind it. You notice energy shifts others ignore. You pick up on patterns others miss. You read between lines that most people don't even realize exist. And because of that, you move differently. Not loudly, not impulsively, but intentionally. That's why your silence holds weight. That's why your presence feels different. That's why people react to you, without fully understanding why. Because awareness is powerful, and yours. It goes beyond the surface of this world. There were moments when you felt alone, weren't there? Moments when it seemed like no one truly understood you. Moments when your awareness felt more like a burden than a gift. Because seeing deeply means feeling deeply. And feeling deeply means carrying things others don't even notice. But what you didn't realize then was that your awareness was never meant to isolate you. It was meant to protect you. They saw something they couldn't understand. How you avoided traps without knowing the full story. How you distanced yourself before things went wrong. How you stayed calm in situations that should have shaken you. They felt something they couldn't control, because your presence alone was enough to disrupt what was hidden. And then there's something even deeper, of something you felt, but maybe never fully named. That quiet strength inside you, not loud, not aggressive, but unshakable. Have you ever gone through something that should have broken you, but didn't? Moments where the pressure was too much, the weight too heavy, the situation too overwhelming. And yet, you endured, you stood, you rose. That's not luck, that's not coincidence. That's inner strength. A strength that doesn't come from the outside world, but from something rooted deep within you. Something that refuses to let you fall completely. Something that holds you together, even when everything around you feels like it's falling apart. They saw something they couldn't understand. How you kept going when there was no reason left. How you found clarity in chaos. How you remained grounded when everything else felt unstable. They felt something they couldn't control, because your strength wasn't visible, but it was undeniable. And then, there's the part that's hardest to explain. The part that goes beyond logic, beyond psychology, beyond anything that can be easily defined. A protection. Not the kind you can see, not the kind you can touch, but the kind you can feel. Have you ever noticed how certain things just didn't happen to you? How certain situations almost unfolded, but didn't? How certain paths were closed off even when you wanted them? At the time it felt frustrating, confusing, even unfair. But looking back, you can see it differently now. You weren't being blocked. You were being guided, protected from things you couldn't yet see. They saw something they couldn't understand. How you slipped through situations that should have trapped you. How you avoided outcomes that seemed inevitable. How you remained untouched by things that affected others deeply. They felt something they couldn't control, because there was something around you, something they couldn't reach. Or call it intuition, call it awareness, call it inner strength, call it protection. Whatever it is, it's real, and it's part of what makes you different, not better than others, not above anyone, but set apart, because you don't move blindly, you don't live unconsciously, you don't exist without awareness of something deeper, and whether you fully understand it yet or not, there's a reason for that. A reason you've always felt different, a reason your path has never been simple, a reason your experiences have shaped you in ways others can't relate to. Because you were never meant to live on the surface. You were meant to see beyond it. They saw something they couldn't understand. They felt something they couldn't control. And now, you're finally starting to understand it yourself. That what makes you different was never a weakness. It was the power you were always meant to step into. And that truth shook them completely. They couldn't handle what they found. There's something you need to understand, something that explains everything that happened, and everything that's happening now. The one who came into your life, the one who watched, who studied, who tried to get close enough to figure you out. They failed. Not loudly, not dramatically, but completely. At first you didn't notice it. You were still being yourself, still moving quietly, still observing everything without needing to react. But something in them started to change. The energy shifted. Their presence felt different. Their consistency disappeared. And then, it became obvious. They couldn't handle it. They weren't ready. They backed away. Have you ever watched someone slowly become a stranger, even though they were once so close? The conversations that used to flow now feel forced. The interest they once showed now feels distant. The connection that seemed strong now feels fractured. That's not random. That's what failure looks like. When someone realizes they stepped into something they didn't understand. They thought they could read you. They thought they could break you down into patterns, predict your reactions, understand your mind. But you don't operate like that, and the deeper they tried to go, the more they realized there was something about you they couldn't access. They couldn't handle it. The depth, the awareness, the way you felt things without needing explanation. They weren't ready. For someone who couldn't be easily influenced, for someone who didn't react the way they expected, for someone who saw through things quietly, completely. They backed away, because staying meant facing something that made them uncomfortable. And that discomfort, it grew. Have you noticed how they started acting differently? Less confident, less present, more cautious, almost nervous. Like they were second-guessing themselves, like they were unsure how to approach you anymore. That's because something inside them broke, not in a loud, visible way, but internally, the certainty they once had, gone, the control they thought they had, lost. And now, they don't know what to do. They couldn't handle it, because the version of you they expected never existed. They weren't ready. for the reality of who you actually are. They backed away, because the closer they got, the more exposed they began to feel. That's the part no one talks about. When someone comes to study you, to understand you, to uncover you, but instead, they end up confronting themselves, their own intentions, their own insecurities, their own limitations. And that's overwhelming. So what do? Well, they withdraw. Suddenly, they're not around as much. Messages slow down, then stop. Their presence becomes inconsistent, then disappears. No explanation, no closure, just distance. Because facing you started to feel like facing a mirror they weren't prepared for. They couldn't handle it, seeing themselves clearly for the first time. They weren't ready to be understood on the same level they tried to understand you. They backed away, because staying meant losing the illusion they were holding onto. And sometimes, it goes deeper than that. Sometimes, there's fear. Unspoken, unadmitted, but real. Have you ever looked into someone's eyes and felt something shift? Like they suddenly became aware of something and didn't like what they saw. That's not your imagination. That's recognition. A recognition that you're not who they thought you were. Recognition that you see more than they expected. Recognition that they've lost control of the situation. And fear is the natural response to that. They couldn't handle it. The feeling of being seen. They weren't ready to be understood without saying a word. They backed away, because your presence alone started to feel like pressure. And in some cases, that pressure turns into something even more intense. Emotional instability, confusion, breakdown. Because when someone builds their confidence on assumptions, and those assumptions collapse, they don't always know how to recover. They become unpredictable, hot and cold, close and distant, kind then suddenly cold, not because of you, but because of what's happening inside them. They couldn't handle it. The collapse of what they believed about you. They weren't ready for the truth they uncovered. They backed away, because staying meant confronting something they couldn't control. And now, look at the situation clearly. Who's stable? Who's grounded? Who's still standing in their energy unchanged? You are. And who shifted? Who became inconsistent? Who lost their sense of direction? They did. That's the reversal. The one who came to observe became overwhelmed. The one who thought they had control lost it. The one who thought they understood you realized they didn't understand anything at all. They couldn't handle it. They weren't ready. They backed away. And without you chasing, without you forcing anything, without you even needing to respond, the truth revealed itself. You were never the one being exposed. They were. Because in the end, they exposed themselves instead. If you're hearing this, it means you already made it through. This is where everything becomes clear. Not in pieces, not in confusion, but in truth. You've been through it. The questions, the pressure, the silent tests you didn't even know you were taking. And yet, you're still here. That alone tells you everything you need to know. You passed the test. Not because it was easy, not because you had all the answers, but because you became the answer. Every moment you stayed grounded. Every time you chose awareness over reaction. Every second you trusted that quiet voice inside you. You were passing. You passed the test. Say it again, you passed the test. Let it sink in, not as words, but as truth. Because the version of you that once questioned everything is not the same version standing here now. You are aware. You are grounded. You are no longer searching blindly. You are seeing clearly. And that changes everything. There was a time when you wondered, why is this happening to me? Why do I feel watched, tested, challenged in ways I can't explain. But now you understand. It wasn't to break you. It was to reveal you, to show you what you're made of. And you didn't fold. You rose. You passed the test. And because you passed, there's something else you need to understand. Something powerful. Something final. You can't be exposed anymore. Let that hit you. There is nothing left for anyone to uncover. Nothing left for anyone to use against you. Nothing left for anyone to manipulate. Why? Because you've already faced yourself. You've already seen your own depths, your own shadows, your own truths. And you didn't run. You stood in it. You accepted it. You grew from it. So what can anyone else reveal that you don't already know? Nothing. You can't be exposed anymore. Say it again. You can't be exposed anymore, because awareness is protection. And you are aware. You see the patterns now. You feel the energy shifts. You recognize intentions without needing proof. You are not guessing anymore. You are not doubting anymore. You are not blind anymore. You are awake. And once you're awake, there's no going back. That's why your presence feels different now. That's why your energy feels untouchable. That's why certain people can't stand near you the way they used to. Because you're no longer operating on the same level. You are protected. Not just in the way people think. Not just from what you can see, but in ways that go beyond explanation. Think about everything you've survived. Everything you've walked through. Everything that should have stopped you, but didn't. That wasn't luck. That was protection. That was alignment. That was something greater making sure you stayed on your path. You are protected. Say it again. You are protected. Not fragile, not vulnerable, not easily shaken. Protected. And then with that protection comes power. Not loud power, not forced power, but quiet, unshakable, undeniable power. The kind of power that doesn't need validation. The kind of power that doesn't need to prove anything. The kind of power that simply is. You are powerful. Feel that. Not as an idea, but as a reality. Because everything you went through was building this version of you. The aware version. The grounded version. The untouchable version. And now you don't have to question your path anymore. You don't have to second guess your instincts. You don't have to explain yourself to anyone. You just know. You passed the test. You can't be exposed anymore. You are protected. You are aware. You are powerful. Repeat it again and again and again until it's no longer something you're trying to believe, but something you embody, because this isn't motivation. This isn't just words. This is recognition, a recognition of who you've become, recognition of what you've stepped into, recognition of the truth that was always inside you, waiting for you to realize it. And now that you have, there's only one thing left to do: stand in it, fully, unapologetically, without fear, because nothing outside of you has power over you anymore. Not their opinions, not their intentions, not their presence. Nothing. You are no longer the one being watched. You are the one who sees. You are no longer the one being tested. You are the one who passed. You are no longer the one being questioned. You are the answer, so walk like it, think like it, move like it. Because this is your moment, and there's no going back. You passed the test. You can't be exposed anymore. You are protected. You are aware. You are powerful. And now, you are awake.